Yo, what is up everybody? Today here. Today I wanted to show you guys a build that I've been working on in Torchlight Infinite. What you're seeing here is T8 for a showcase of what it looks like to map with it. That is the Seething Rehan Berserking Blade autobomber. So essentially how this build works is you have to trigger a main skill. And once you trigger that main skill, a Mirage melee sort of person will appear on your back. And what he's going to do is going to attack with your main skill and will also render you not able to use that skill. But what you can do with this is basically it turns any melee ability into a autobomber like ability. So essentially you'll just be vacuuming loot, walking around, everything explodes, and on top of that you'll get additional scaling, which we'll talk about a little bit about later. But basically this build is pretty insane. As you can see here on the screen, it's making the 8-4 look like a joke. You can absolutely dummy cap on this build. My gear is not even absolutely optimal. I am using way less strong gear than I will be showing you later in a builder. However, in the builder, I wanted to make sure that you guys had the best gear, sort of the best example to strive towards. And yeah, I hope you guys are gonna find this helpful and, you know, enjoy the showcase. So first of all, I wanted to talk a little bit about how we convert our damage, because it's really important on you know, how to basically scale this build. There are two main ways to convert our damage, and the way that we want to do it is either by getting the mixture slate, which is one that you can find on the pedigree. And the mixture slate, what it's going to do is it's going to convert 99% of your physical damage and 99% of your elemental damage into erosion damage. And essentially this allows us to shift, you know, our physical damage onto another element and then onto another element again. But the way we're going to be doing that is we're going to be using two God of Might divinity slates, and they're going to have 50% of physical damage converted to fire. We're going to have two of those. What we'll do from there is we'll then convert our fire damage into erosion damage with the mixture slate. And the reason why we want to do that is because this is an aura stacker build, and the more damage types we inflict, or the more damage types we have, the more ways we get to scale them. So for example, we can use charged flames. It will give us 26% additional damage, you know, fire damage. And on top of that, we can also use one of the strongest auras in the game, precise erosion enhancement, which gives you additional damage to life, as well as erosion damage and erosion penetration. And that'll be the last stage of our damage. We will be using a variety of other auras, but we'll talk about that a little later when we go into a deep breakdown of the skills. So first of all, I wanted to look at the hero relic, which we're going to use for this build, and that you really need to get 10% explode damage, or as close to 10% as possible. And the secondary mod, of course, is going to be a luxury. Essentially, what you want on there is to have physical damage or any AoE of the sort. Next, we will look for 9 additional rage when your Seething Spirit uses a skill. You need to have this on both your hero memories. It's really important, because that is what is going to enable you to have your Seething Spirit up 100% of the time, right? So you'll never go down once he's up. The secondary skill that's really good, again, on this is going to be movement speed or area of effect, or, you know, if you want to go for additional damage, that's fine too, you know, if you're just bossing or anything like that. But I like movement speed. It's really nice quality of life for mapping. Next, the future bird offering is going to be very important, because this is what is going to give you 100% additional damage for your Seething Spirit when it's slotted in the 5th engram. So make sure you slot it in the 5th. So when you're looking for relics, you need to have the 5th engram open. Okay, you're going to be slotting that, and on top of that, it's going to make you unarmed or disarmed, right? Which is going to be very important for us, because we are getting additional scaling by the fact that we are unarmed. And that is in the form of this body armor here that you can see. It gives 3 to 5 physical damage per attacks, per 3 strength when unarmed. So yeah, we want to have that in a 5th engram there. So we have our hero relics, and our hero traits are going to be Seething, Rampart Emotions, Growing Anger, Hysteria, and lastly, Rage Infusion. So this will give us a substantial amount of damage for our Seething Spirit, and since it's going to be up 100% of the time, basically you're going to be dealing a crazy amount of damage. So you can look at all of the details, you know, of the skills and stuff like that here in the builder that I will link in the description. I just want to talk a little bit more about the very important things about this build, so that you have a general idea of what to strive for, and, you know, the modifiers that are very important for the build. So we'll quickly glance over some of the items that is going to be here. We really want to have -12 sealed mana. The T0 modifier is very beneficial here, as we are an aura stacker. Getting more auras is going to give us a ton more power as we're stacking aura effect, right? The second mod that is the most important is going to be aura effect. If you have another mod on this that you want to go for a T0, that will be the one, right? Then the other two mods that are insane are going to be additional damage dealt by nearby enemies and strength. Lastly, gear armor is going to be present on basically all of our gear. That's because it's just going to give us a ton of damage reduction. So get it wherever possible, but it is not by any means, crazy. Like you have to get this at a higher tier or anything like that. I actually opted in for just enchanting it on my gear in game. So you can do that too as well, of course. The body armor is going to be very important because this we need to have the T0 on our mod. It's going to give us an insane amount of damage. It's going to be the most, basically, it's going to be the craziest modifier for us to have a T0. You definitely want to have that T0. You can upgrade also Aura Effect or Active Skill Gems. That's up to you. The other modifiers that we want on this are going to be percent strength, active skill gems, and any other suffix you can have. You can also swap erosion resistance onto another piece of gear or something like that. For our amulet, in my situation, I really like to use Eternity. It's a really fun amulet. However, the best in slot damage amulet is going to just be a hero's necklace because it's going to give us 8% increased strength on the implicit. But also here we can get additional sealed mana, strength, erosion res, active skill gems, flat energy shield, which is nice because we don't actually get that much flat energy shield outside of our aura, and it's just great in order to get like a higher HP pool. This character, and you're gonna notice like we don't have any energy shield gear at all, but because we're scaling so much aura effect, we're getting about 5 to 6k energy shield just from the aura itself. Definitely good to have it on pieces wherever possible. So our gloves, it is mandatory to have fervor. This does not need to be T0. It only gives an additional 20% critical strike damage. However, if you can get melee skill level to T0, that is probably going to be the strongest one for sure. So upgrade that one first, and then strength, percent strength, fervor, and whatever else you can get on there. Our belt, we definitely want strength, damage per 8 stat, as well as percent stats. And on our prefixes, armor, energy shield, negative damage taken while at low mana, since we'll always be at low mana. That's basically 10% less damage taken, right? Note that low mana just means that even if you have it reserved, you have low mana. You're just always going to be on low mana with this build. It's really, really good. For the boots, we're going to want to be going for crafted boots. These give both a ton of damage as well as, utility in the fact that we're getting aura effect, ton of movement speed, 60%. I like to get this one T0 as well. 60% is great. And then, strength, erosion damage, as well as gear armor, and that kind of stuff. This ring is a unique ring. We want to get this corroded because it gives us an additional 10% on top of the non-corroded variant. And since we are converting from physical onto fire and then onto erosion, it's going to be basically 100% uptime on 45% additional damage, which you can imagine is just crazy. There's nothing in the game that is quite as strong as this. For our ring slots, so we definitely want to have at least one of these. If you're very, very greedy, you could go for 2, but I don't recommend it as we're going to be using our second slot here to fill out some of the things that we don't have elsewhere, right? So I like to get scale radius on this, maybe percent elemental resistance, as this might save a couple of points on your skill tree, but it's also quite efficient because it gives erosion resistance, and we need erosion resistance. We want to get as close to cap as possible. For the prefixes, you can go for flat physical damage, energy shield, armor, and that kind of stuff. For the weapon, the ideal weapon is going to have elemental damage, erosion damage, additional damage applied to life. Going to then have additionally attack speed, strength, and chance to multi-strike. However, if you're just starting out with the build, know that you can actually use this weapon here, the Farewell Desire. And I have one corrupted, of course, because that mod is just insane. It gives so much damage. The increasing multi-strikes. However, a crafted one is always going to be better in the end game. But if you just want to get started off, buy a Farewell Desire. It costs pretty cheap here to get one. Yeah, definitely highly, highly recommended. And lastly, for the shield, you want to have active skill gems. This can be, elevated to T0 at +3. Additional physical damage as fire, as well as aura effect, strength, and critical damage. That's basically going to be what you want to look for on your gear. And on the slates, there's going to be obviously a lot of modifiers that you can get on there, but I'll quickly glance over and tell you guys that multi-strikes and increasing damage while multi-striking is very strong. Percent strength, you're going to want to be getting as much percent strength as possible. 1% chance to deal double damage per 100 strength is insane. We're going to be getting 900 strength about with this build, so that is basically 9% double damage as well as 3% strength. That's going to also scale your flat damage that you get from that. And you're going to want to stack that on as many slates as possible. Other modifiers that you can look for are sealed mana, aura effect, percent strength, double damage, that kind of stuff. Anything to do with multi-strikes as well is very good. So yeah, definitely look out for those. And of course, on 2 God of Might Divinity slates, we need to have 50% of physical converted to fire. That is very important, as we previously mentioned. That do not miss out on those for sure. Since the mixture slate is going to be pretty expensive and also quite rare, another variant or another way to get the conversion is going to be by merging candles. And I can show you guys in game right now. That is exactly what I have done. So if you merge a bunch of T1 modifiers together, you're going to be getting the chance of getting, converts 99% of fire damage to erosion damage, which essentially is exactly the same thing that mixture does. However, it is actually a downside. So there's no way to actually target this modifier aside from merging a bunch of T1 modifiers together until you manage to lock out on this. Getting this on like a sealed mana for aura skills is absolutely insane. So I got pretty lucky on that, but I did merge a lot of them together. It doesn't really matter too much what modifier you have on there, but if you do manage to get it on a good one, that is pretty awesome. So yeah, just start melting candles together, have T1 modifiers, and hopefully eventually you should get that as soon as possible. But yeah, the second option, of course, would be the mixture slate. And as we previously mentioned, mixture converts 99% of physical damage to and elemental damage to erosion damage. It also gives you a bit of paralyze, so that's really nice. So yeah, if you don't have the mixture slate, make sure that you get paralyzed somewhere. It is important, and that is going to be able to, you're going to be able to get that by purchasing precise weapon amplification over the normal variant. Let's go over the skills, let's go over the skills a little bit and the links and the reason why we chose those. So of course, Berserking Blade is going to be our primary skill. Then you're going to have critical strike damage increase. It's going to deal additional damage to monsters that are taking critical strikes. Harden is one of the best supports in the game. It gives you additional damage, but also 25% damage reduction. Flash Do It is mandatory. Of course, this is going to give you increased damage from steep strikes and that kind of stuff, and additional chances against steep strikes. Raging Slash, again, steep strikes, deal additional damage, all that kind of good stuff. Multi-strike is very important. You're dealing increased damage with multi-strikes, and you're getting additional damage from multi-strikes too. Yeah, really, really good link there. Speed Phantom, you can choose to use Blink here if you want, but I like Speed Phantom because, as you're progressing maps and stuff like that, your A is quite big. So when you're going to be dashing into things, you can essentially vacuum things on top of you. In situations where the monsters have proxy shields, it's also really nice because you dash on top of them and they're essentially all sucked up. And yeah, they just basically explode, and that's really good. Cooldown reduction and Magic Dash. Magic Dash gives a little bit of movement speed, so that's pretty good. Next, we'll use Bull Rage, and don't worry, these skills are all going to be triggered by rhythm. So the only thing you'll ever have to press is Speed Phantom on this build. It's so comfy to play. I really enjoy it. Yeah, you're going to be going for Bull's Rage, Ceaselessness, and Rhythm, and then you're going to be getting a defensive buffer. Defensive buffer is crazy. We are getting Tenacity Blessings on kill. That's 4 stacks. And those stacks are consumed, and it's going to give you 15% damage reduction for that, and an additional 15% baseline from this. So you'll be getting 15% additional damage reduction, even if you don't have charges. But when you do have charges, they get consumed. That'll give you 30% damage reduction, multiplicative with all your other stuff, right? So you're not going to be getting to immunity, but you are going to be getting a ton of that. So you won't feel like, you won't feel like you'll be dying in many situations. We want to link that to a defensive layer. Defensive layer is basically going to force restart your energy shield recharge. That's going to keep you up as you map, and it's going to make it so that it can't be interrupted for 2 seconds. So essentially, you'll just be getting your energy shield recharges, and then it goes away and it recharges and whatever. But you'll also be getting some regain onto your skill tree. So not only will you have it recharging, but when you hit stuff, you will be getting a percentage of that back to you. So you'll be essentially getting a percentage of your total pool back every hit in an interval. And then you'll be linking that to Rhythm. Lastly, you got Burst of Anger, additional attack speed, movement speed, all that good stuff. And we have Well Fought Battle as well, because this is going to be refreshing on kill. So as you're mapping, right, you want to have Well Fought Battle, and this can stack up to 10 times. So that's 3.9% increased effect of Well Fought Battle, stacking up to 10 times. So that's 40% increased. It's going to give you, 40% more additional attack speed, movement speed and that kind of stuff as it's going. And it's going to be reprocced by rhythm. On single target, you know, all of these things are just going to be sort of going up and down. And I can show you after here on dummy. Your damage is a little bit variant, but the top end of the damage is pretty insane, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. For our auras, this is very important because the aura is like everything about this build. We are an aura stacker, and it's going to be a bit tricky for you to actually fit all the auras in, so you might have to fiddle with which auras are going on to your life, as well as which auras are going on to your mana. But as long as you're getting 8% sealed mana here on a candle, as well as a necklace, you will have enough, right? It's not going to be a problem for you. You can always get it additionally on slates. So, you know, getting a few percents on slates is going to alleviate some of that requirement away. And you can also get this as T0 up to 12% by merging 2 sealed mana for aura skills, or also 2 aura effect slates together, right? So it's basically going to be a 50-50 between what modifier you get. In the case that you do actually get that to T0. Except for our auras, weapon amplification is crazy. More damage, more attack speed. Fearless, it's going to give you a ton of crit scaling as well as crit damage. Then you'll be using charged flames, additional fire damage. And since we are converting to fire, you know, that's just basically more damage again. Precise energy fortress, I think you should get this precise for sure, because it's going to give you additional energy shields scaled by your aura effect, as well as a ton of flat. Then erosion enhancement is also should be precise, because the precise version gives you additional erosion penetration. We don't have much of that, so yeah, it's going to be very, very strong, as well as additional damage. Then lastly, we use stand as one. This could be quite expensive. However, this can give you an, when it's used in the 6 link, about 30% aura effect, right, for every single aura here. So they're all going to be basically getting 30%. That's like getting, you know, 2 T1 rolls on your gear. So just think about that. It's like really, really, really strong. 2 T1 rolls is insane. And then here we're going to be using our curse, which is corruption. We're going to be linking that to curse cast on crit. The reason why we use it cast on crit is because it doesn't have a downside. For example, curse on hit has a downside, right? In that it gives negative 20% effective curses. You know, we don't actually have any troubles with our life reservation, so we're just going to be putting that on cast on crit instead. There you'll be getting full effect of this here curse. And that is going to be, you know, giving you erosion resistance penetration, which is very, very good. And then we'll be also putting precise elemental resistance here. It doesn't fit into our main 6 link. And also we don't really need it since we have already capped the resistances with, you know, just 1 roll and this. And as well, it's going to give you like a 2 to 3 max resistance, depending on how much aura effect you have. So that's really cool. You'll end up at like 77, 78. Lastly, we use Euphoria on hit, and we want to have Fixate on there. So Fixate is going to give a insane amount of damage, double damage for each enemy affected. Put that on Euphoria on hit, and that's going to be seal converted, much like cast on crit. And then the last 2 auras, which you can actually, you know, decide whether you want to put them on life or on mana, and also change their levels because they reserve a different amount depending on what level they are. That is going to be precise swiftness, precise steadfast. You will be putting those there. You can swap those around with other auras, you know, just to make sure that you're actually able to reserve all of this stuff. And as I was like progressing with the build, you know, there might have been some auras that I took out. Like, for example, I didn't use steadfast till like later on, until I got my sealed mana sorted and that kind of stuff. So that is totally up to you. Lastly, for our candle, we want to have 1 candle that gives you Fearless Warcry trigger. The way that you get this is going to be by melting together 2 candles that give a Warcry AoE or Warcry cast speed. It's going to be a 1 in 3 chance or 1 in 4 chance to getting this mod. Definitely start looking out for those once you do your City of Atera, because this here gives you like an additional 40% damage. It's really, really, really strong. Make sure you look out for that and get that as soon as possible. Lastly, for our skills, we'll just glance over this real quick. But first of all, we're going to be going for God of War, and we want to have Brutality, which gives you 35% additional damage, and Instant Smash, essentially, which ignores armor. Armor now gives a lot of damage reduction for all damage types, physical, elemental, and erosion. But having this is basically just essentially like having armor penetration. It's really good. You have 100% crit, so that's really nice. You'll be seeing in the planner here the nodes that you want to, so I won't really go over everything. And then we want to be going for Ronin. We use Sprinkle, that is a lot of damage, right? As well as a ton of AoE. 20% chance to have additional 80% radius, and that's also gonna be, you know, helping you with your clear. And Falling Leaves, we don't actually deal damage with our weapons, so our Seething Spirit does. So this essentially equates to 60% additional attack damage. Crazy. It's so much damage. Definitely a really good one to have. And then Ronin is like one of the best trees on in the game. You know, we're gonna be getting so much fervor effect, so much critical damage, all of that good stuff. Yeah, it's really, really nice. And lastly, Steel Vanguard, the most quality of life tree for sure. So we're going to be getting a ton of elemental resistance as well as erosion res, aura effect, sealed mana, all that kind of good stuff. And we'll be getting additional aura effect, which is really, really good for us because additional aura effect essentially means that it's a multiplier for your already present aura effect. Imagine you have 100% increased aura effect. This additional is going to be 25% extra on top of that. But if you have 200, it's 50, etc., etc. So it's really, really good. It's going to give you a lot of additional aura effect. And lastly, you'll go for here knowledge, 10%, it's going to give you 10 defensive skill levels, which is really nice for your defensive buffer, but it's also going to give you 55% empower skill effect, which empower skills are things like Bull Rage, Burst of Anger, as well as Fixate, I believe. So yeah, a 55% increased effect of all of these, and these give you so much damage. Like it's crazy how much damage these give. I wouldn't be surprised if they nerf them in the future. That pretty much sums up all the skills, the gear, and I'll just finish the video off just by punching the dummy a little bit and showing you guys what I have. I usually use Eternity instead, but for the, for this one demonstration, I bought this for 5 FE. It's just gonna give you a little bit of strength. I don't recommend using this at all. I do think you should definitely absolutely need to use this amulet instead. And then I'll quickly glance over my gear just so you guys have an idea of where I'm at currently with my character. So it's my helmet, my body armor, my gloves, my amulet, belt, my boots, ring 1, ring 2, weapon, and shield. And then for my candles, I have a, Fearless Warcry with skill radius, as well as aura effect, seal mana, and conversion. But I am also using the Slate, which is like really weird, right? Let me open that up for you guys. I am using the Slate with mixture and no loose ends, but I'm only getting the benefit of no loose ends now. I actually slammed that candle today. So yeah, I'm basically not getting any use out of the candle aside for the reservation, the mana efficiency. Yeah, I'm using this Slate, and I'm using additional life and multi-strikes increasing damage. There's going to be convert as well as some strength double damage, another convert and strength double damage, as well as some fizz damage and sealed mana. That Slate is pretty insane, honestly. Here we have additional damage while holding a shield. That's also a really good mod. Strength double damage, crit life, armor, right? Armor is good for us for sure. And then I have a Fallen Starlight there that gives me double damage. And yeah, it's not very good, honestly. It's 2% chance to deal double damage as well as some physical damage. It's like a really bad Slate, but it's something to have. It's something a little extra. Percent strength would be insane to have on that for sure. Gonna hit the dummy here real quick, and you can see that we ramp up relatively slowly compared to some builds, because we do need to get our additional damage as well as our war cries. But once it's up, we're basically gonna be stable here at 99%. So yeah, there's various buffs that we have, like Bull's Rage, like all of that kind of stuff that gives you like almost double damage. So yeah, I mean, staying at 99% means that we have a 99 billion means that we have a lot more damage than 99 bill, assuming, considering the fact that we are getting like 200% more damage from our power skills. So yeah, the only thing is that obviously there's like a little bit of ramp up time at the beginning, but once you're at 99 bill, you're basically just going to be staying there the entire time. There's a lot of stuff that I can still improve on this build. Yeah, I just wanted to show you guys sort of what my character looks like. Quickly, I'll glance over the defense because it's not a squishy character. We have 35% damage reduction to all damage from our armor, as well as 60%. Then we have 78 max resistances, and we have some attack block, some spell block, as well as all of the damage reduction that we get from our defensive buffer, which is 30% damage reduction. And then on top of that, harden will give us an additional 25% damage reduction. So we are not a squishy build. We can basically walk through T8 4s with no problem whatsoever. That pretty much sums up the video. and I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's basically an overview of the build. I think this class is extremely slept on. Nobody is playing this really. You can see 1 Giga Chat went to 100, but yeah, check out the ladder. Man, this is a really strong build. I am very surprised not many people are playing it, but yeah, you can see some other people playing it to maybe get some examples from what they're doing. Thanks guys, thank you very much everybody for watching.